the review committee and talk about it.
So we're going to that now.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I believe we said we were starting following board. I think everyone's had a quick break. So let's get started.
Closer to your view.
I just think they were.
All right. Good morning and welcome to the Kent County COVID Relief Subcommittee for October 8th. I will welcome the public. You are joining us via Zoom. We are here in person pursuant to the current laws and regulations of the state. So welcome everyone. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from October 5th?
Moved by Brevi, support by Jones.
Moved by Brevi, support by Jones. Questions or comments on the minutes from the COVID relief? I don't see any. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes are approved. We are on to item 3, rapid testing. I believe we were going to
Yes,
have Adam.
Adam London is on the line. He should be there. And you had questions about rapid testing. We wanted to make sure the health department gave us an update and clarified what the need would be, if there's a need, and whether it would be good use of county CARES funds. So, Adam?
Hey, good morning, everyone. And so, you know, there have been a lot of developments with testing in the past month or so. There have been a couple of new technologies that have been approved with emergency use authorizations by FDA. One being saliva testing, which is an RNA-based testing technology. The other is called the Binax. It's a test provided by Abbott Laboratories, the same laboratory which produced the earlier rapid test that the county acquired with the actual testing machine. Now, this new testing technology is the test technology that was announced in a press release from the federal government a few weeks ago, with the announcement that over 100 million of these test kits are being distributed to the states. The state of Michigan has received and is receiving many of these test kits now. In fact, we were contacted yesterday to set up a meeting with HHS officials to receive test kits, those Binax test kits for antigen testing. It would be a more rapid test that we can deploy to K through 12 and assisted living and perhaps other congregate living settings. So that is encouraging. These things, and the opportunity for these were all included in our request a few weeks ago when we asked for the additional funding. So at this time, we're not asking for any additional funding for more rapid testing. We believe that we have more than sufficient funding at this time to do what we need to do, especially in consideration of the funds that the state has provided to us and these test kits that the federal government is making available to us. And so you also know we have partnered with Godfrey Lee Schools here in the last week to start a pilot where we're providing them with a saliva test kit technology, which is what we call a near rapid test kit. It takes about 20 hours, but is far more accurate than the other rapid test kits that are out there right now. We hope to roll that out in a much broader way to other schools over the course of the next month. Godfrey Lee is very excited about this, and they've been very pleased so far with that saliva test kit, which does not require PPE. It can be self-administered, like the child simply just spits in a vial, and that's delivered to the laboratory here in Grand Rapids. And we've got really good turnaround on that right now. So we're really confident that the things we have in place right now and the resources we have right now are improving and are sufficient for providing the testing support that our schools are needing.
We have questions for Adam on the rapid testing or any other? Commissioner Jones and then Commissioner Skaggs.
Hello, Adam. Thank you so much for that update. And I wanted to ask about what is your definition? What is the definition of rapid? What is that?
So usually when people are using the term rapid testing, they're talking about a near immediate test, 5 to 15 minutes. They're generally these antigen tests, which are basically looking for proteins on the outer covering of the virus particle. They're not nearly as accurate as the true RNA, the genetic testing, which takes a day or two usually. And so there is a high rate of false negatives and false positives with these antigen tests. So we try not to use them unless they're the only tool available or in just certain particular circumstances. And many of the healthcare systems have strayed away from them because they're not a true diagnostic test. If someone has a positive with one of these rapid tests, they need to follow through with a secondary confirmatory RNA test. So sorry for the long answer, usually looking at 15 minutes or so.
So just as a follow-up, there's 3-hour tests, and I know those exist because my stepdad had one in Florida. Where are we with the 3-hour test? Are you familiar with those?
I believe the 3-hour test is the Binax test that I spoke about. So the testing itself, the process of the testing is usually about 3 hours because there's a provider involved, but the test analyses or the processing of it is much shorter than that. So once the sample is collected and run through the device, it can be quicker. And also depends on how much laboratory capacity a place has. So you could run an RNA test in 3 hours or less if you had laboratory capacity to support that, which would be quite an increase in that infrastructure.
And then just my last follow-up, which is the financial piece with what happens after December 30th? Does anybody have any idea?
And so I've got Gail Brink on the call. She's our finance director at the health department. I think that she can give some insight with the resources that we have, what we can use past December 31st. Gail?
Yes, at this point for testing, we don't really have any funding after December 30th. We do have funding from the state of Michigan for contact tracing, and we are thinking that testing in the schools with the contact tracing might fall within that category too. So we're hoping that the state would allow us to do some testing that would be in the schools with that funding. But there is once the CARES Act funding is done, specifically related to testing, it's done as of December 30th, unless there's additional funds that come our way. So unfortunately, if we can purchase some rapid tests in advance or whatever, that would be, we could do that by 12/30. But other than that, there's really not much else we can do at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair. So Adam, with the funding that we have, and given the pilot program at Godfrey Lee, what would be your hopes to be able to roll out a K through 12 program? Do we have the money for that? And how often are our students tested then?
And so we do believe we have the money for it. And these tests are all reimbursable by either private insurance or Medicaid. So there's actually very little cost that has to be absorbed by us, as it turns out. We have 2 laboratories in town that have reached out to our local schools. Many of them are making arrangements now with NextGen for the RNA testing, and others are making arrangements with Arctic Labs, which is the Saliva Test. So we feel pretty good about the infrastructure that's building right there. And I'm sorry, I forgot the other part of your question.
Just the recommendation that the health department would give about the frequency of testing students and faculty.
Yeah, so it's really based on symptoms, and we're not doing any broad screening in general at this time. It's based on an algorithm that we put in place with the schools and with CDC and HHS guidance about who should be tested and how frequently, and then the contact tracing, of course, to make sure that there is testing available for exposures as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Womack.
Yes, I'd like to pick up where Commissioner Phil Skaggs left off. When it comes to our schools, I know that it's recently been reported that there's been some outbreaks of coronavirus, COVID-19 in some Southwest Michigan schools that have returned back to the classroom. How many schools would you estimate may be open in Kent County? And if there are any that are not doing this virtually, that actually have children in classrooms, what are some of the precautions being taken to make sure that we don't duplicate what we just saw happen in Southwest Michigan with these outbreaks?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, our superintendents worked all summer long with us to build the playbook that we have, and that's available on Access Kent if you'd like to look at that. That has the plans that have been put in place, the PPE that's been made available, the testing, the contact tracing. We have a software program that's in place now for the schools to use so they can quickly notify contacts. They can quickly notify people of test results. So there's been a lot of work there done. And I think that our results in the last month have been promising with those schools that have reopened in person. We've had, at last count, 170 K through 12 aged students who have tested positive for coronavirus. 99 of them had an exposure to a known case outside of the school setting. 6 of them had an exposure to someone who it turns out was positive inside the school setting, and about 65 were unknown. So the majority of those cases in the young people are actually happening, we think, because of exposures that have happened outside of school. So we're feeling pretty good about what we've seen to date with the schools. Now, we have had a few outbreaks. We had Caledonia High School the early September, which was linked to an event outside of school. So Caledonia had to go to virtual for a couple weeks. We've had Lowell Middle School here in the past couple of days, where there was some faculty and some students that were positive. And we've had, the Rockford football team. We've had a few isolated instances, a couple of classrooms here and there. But I feel good at this point that the system is working and identifying those cases early, doing the contact tracing, and keeping those outbreaks limited in size and scope. And we've had the majority of these cases are just one person in a classroom and haven't been 3 or 4, growing into a larger outbreak. So the timing to support the investigation and to get isolation seems to be working well so far.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you for being so proactive, and thank you for keeping us updated.
Thank you.
Pam's telling me Commissioner Talon has his hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. I indicated to her that I took it down, but because my question was about what the school program looks like, and that's been answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Adam today? Rapid testing or otherwise? Okay. Thank you so much, Adam. We think the world of you. We appreciate your team and everybody that's doing everything to keep us safe in Kent County. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, we are on to item 4, CARES funding allocation review and reserve options. I believe it's this sheet of paper that you all would have received. Wayman, do you want to run us through this, or do we have Steve?
Steve is on the line and I want him to do this. He's the one that's been the architect behind populating this. So Steve, are you there? Can you take them through the document, and then we can get into the balance that's there at the end.
Good morning, Commissioners. As Wayman said, we've worked through this. The upper half of this document indicated the pending subcommittee approvals, which were approved by the full board today. So we will focus on the net reserve and the lower half, starting with the $6.5 million we have left. We have made 5 or 6 recommendations on how to allocate the remaining $6.5 million. First, there's a large boardroom in DeVos Place. We estimate outfitting that would be about $125,000. That cost came from Al Jano, his best guess of what it would take to do that. Second, we're recommending that we allocate another $1 million to schools. Third, we have allocated $500,000 to be used either in gunshot detection or youth violence and crime prevention, depending upon how those proposals work out. We're still in the process of gathering information on that. We have additional post-grant costs that I've talked about before, single audit, recipient monitoring. We're allocating $1 million to cover those costs for the county. Small business grants and loans and technical assistance continuation with the chamber. We're recommending $3.5 million for that. That leaves 428,000 and some change. We're recommending that we put that in the county bucket for additional public safety and health costs that we may incur. If you have some questions, I will try to answer them.
Do we have any questions for Steve? If not, just on those allocations, I do want to call on, I kind of want to go through some of these and have some further explanation of each of them. So do we have questions about the actual bucket amounts, or can we move on to presentations of each of these? Commissioner Steck.
Chair, just a little more on the large boardroom. I know that number is quite a bit lower than what we had talked about at the last meeting. What size meeting room would this be, and would it be
Maybe some of
sufficient
them.
for some of the other community organizations? that are out
This is actually the room that we're in right now.
there? Right here.
Yes, and
So we already spent the 125. It looks good.
No, this is a beginning. And so this would not only be used, as you mentioned, for the county board, but for other boards that are in need of space if this order continues.
Okay.
So that's how we've earmarked it. Al did talk with Rich McKeegan and his team and identified this might be the number that we need to have available until such time that we're out of this particular order.
Okay. Thank you.
And depending on what happens with the legislature, we may
Right.
not even need it, but it'd be nice to hold some aside.
Right.
Commissioner Womack.
It's, when we look at the youth violence and crime prevention at the unallocated reserve, and then the administrative fund recommendations to the subcommittee, at the top, when we see it says youth violence and crime prevention, then on the second part, when it comes back as gunshot detection, youth violence and crime prevention, those are the same $500,000 funds.
It's an additional.
Oh, that's an
500,000.
additional. I'll just double checking. Okay, because I noticed. Okay, so the schools are not at the top, but they're here.
Yeah,
at
remember we
second
approved this
recommendation.
morning the
Yes.
500,000. And so this is the additional that we think might be coming through based on some of the proposals or inquiries that we've had so far.
Okay, and the health department and public safety and health, some of that's going to be explained a little later in the subcommittee.
Yes, we
Okay.
can talk about that now. We've heard from Adam.
Yeah.
We've also had conversations with our sheriff. There could be other expenses coming from the health department between now and the end of the year. We don't know what that will be. So this is what this is for, to make sure that we do have some additional dollars identified should there be any other additional needs. And we don't know what they might be. Right now, we're not certain.
And the public safety and health, is that also allocated funds that the health department could be eligible for help with also?
Yes.
Okay, so we have health department there. Okay, that's great because, we're all hoping that vaccine is going to be available soon, but, we really don't know. And
That's a
the
fact.
stimulus is being held up in Washington. So I'm just glad that the subcommittee, the staff and our public health department, everybody is being as proactive as they can for these this last stretch of 2020. Thank
Okay.
you. I'm glad to see it in there.
I'm gonna call on Dante Villarreal. Dante, are you on Zoom?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Walk us through the reasoning for the 3.5 additional request.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to all of you. As you know, we are on track to be finishing out our grant activity, probably the request side of it or the funding side of it, probably at the end of October this month, right on track. But one of the things that we've seen is an additional need to support small businesses. This request is in response to specifically businesses with over 25 full-time equivalent employees that currently do not meet the criteria to be eligible for the funding. Early on when this process began, we identified the 0 to 25 as the most vulnerable. And that was the case. We recognize businesses that are about 25 to 50 employees. They're a little more readily able to access other resources or opportunities, PPP and SBA and so forth. Well, given the prolonged negative economic conditions, specifically in some industries that this has created, we're seeing these businesses in a very crucial and critical point in their life cycle. They're struggling. We have had I would say over 100 businesses reach out to us inquiring, is there any way they can access this funding given their circumstances? And what we're finding is that many of these businesses, 25 to 50, their overhead, their cost structure is pretty significant. Many of these have buildings that they're still paying, all the fixed costs associated with that. However, they're 50% of revenue for the last 6 months, 25% of revenue, and so forth. We have specifically also about 100 names of businesses that applied for the MEDC Michigan Restart Grant that the Right Place operated. Those 100 businesses that did not, they met eligibility criteria, however, did not get funded given that fund was a lot smaller, about $5 million. So the need is clearly there. And I want to paint a picture, who are these businesses? So if you look at the reports that we've been submitting, you'll see that that manufacturing is only 2.2% of all applicants. And the reason that it's so low, we've been very intentional in working with this segment. The reason it's so low is because the requirement of 25 or less FTEs puts a lot of them out. But as you all know, in all of your districts, we have a lot of manufacturing that is, that's between 25, 30, 40, 45 FTEs or full-time equivalent employees. We want to support them. They are struggling. Their operations, their supply chains have been disrupted and continue to be disrupted. Maybe the demand is starting to be there, but sourcing and getting the raw materials and so on, that especially if it's from overseas, that's a significant challenge. You also see in the reports that we've been submitting, 11.7% of all recipients are retail. So it's still pretty low. Food and beverage is only 15%. What we're finding in a lot of the restaurants and retail businesses that we all have come to know really are just over the 25 full-time equivalent threshold. I'll give you an example. In our building, we have a restaurant called Rome, and Rome is part of Sanchez. Although they've been open and operating, I would say maybe at 25% capacity, their fixed overhead is there, right? And yet they are not eligible for this grant because they're just above the 25 FTE threshold. So we are requesting 3.5 million that we feel we can get out yet this month in support of our small businesses between 25 to 50 employees. The other thing we recognize is that the dollar amount that these grants would better align are the same as with those the extended funding we had for businesses that were closed because of the executive order, which is $10, $20, $30, and $40,000 would really support these businesses. I don't want to take up more of your time, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Anyone have questions for Dante? Commissioner Steck?
Yeah, thank you. Dante, am I correct that this program is not like going out and starting over with that we did with the small recovery? We have a significant number of companies who have already, we're well aware, we know of, and more than sufficient to absorb this because obviously we're running out of time. So
correct. We estimate that this fund, the additional 3.5, we could have it done by the end of October. Absolutely. These businesses are ready to apply and get the much needed resources right now.
thank you.
Commissioner Skaggs?
Thank you, Chair. So just to follow up on that, Dante, so does that mean there will be a new application process for this or the ability of people to apply for it, or is the plan to just go down the list that the Right Place gave you based on their scoring criteria?
So we are going to open it up to all, given that this is about equal access, and we are going to promote it just like We are going to also target those businesses that have been provided by the right place as well, and we'll work with all. The opportunity, I think, is going to be very easy for us to identify those that have been impacted the most and start awarding in response to that.
So those businesses that come from the right place, will they need to apply again, or will you take their application?
That is correct. They would need to apply through the same application process that we have already.
Okay, but you will reach out to them and let them know that they will need to do that.
And
Great.
we're working with the right place and Tim Miraz. I don't know if he's on the call. We're going to ask him to do the reach out for us as well, jointly, so we make sure they're aware of this opportunity.
Excellent. Thank you, Dante.
Any other questions for Dante? I do think we have to probably should at least take a voice vote on changing that criteria from the 25 to 50 and then the different grant allowances. Can we just do a voice vote on that? All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? All right. So I would like to move on to the school proposal that was sent. Again, this has been a real kind of quick turnaround. I did receive a $1 million request from the KISD on behalf of all of our schools in Kent County again. It came in the last 2 days. Chris Glass, are you on the phone today? On Zoom? Don't know if he was going to be here, could make it or not.
I'm not,
Okay. Do we have questions or comments on that? My intention would be just to reallocate the same formula that we did the last time to keep it easy and quick to get the money out as soon as possible. Does anyone have questions on the school request? All right. The last item on here is the gunshot detection, youth violence and crime, the 500,000. Commissioner Womack's been working really hard on this idea. I did speak to our sheriff. Sheriff did speak to members of GRPD. The intention here would just to kind of be put it as a placeholder, kind of an initial allocation, kind of like we did at the very beginning of this process, and see if they can work that out. It's my understanding Grand Rapids has already kind of looked into this and they've done a lot of the footwork on it already. But it will be an undertaking and will have to be really expedited to get it going if they can do that. So in order to hold the allocation, because I got this notice in like the last 2 days, my intention is to kind of hold the allocation here. If we can get it going off the ground, great. If we can't, we could apply it to additional crime prevention concerns or requests that come through. There has been a huge uptick in gun violence in the city of Grand Rapids, as we all know. Commissioner Womack knows very well. He's posting it almost daily, and just want to try to help that out in any way we can. So that's kind of why that's on here. You have questions or concerns about that issue? Commissioner Womack?
Yeah, I just like to make a comment. Just very thankful for the commissioners who may not live in the direct inner city, but still are compassionate towards the life that's been lost. Is at a historical number, easily the highest amount of deaths we've had in the last decade. So historically, I don't know how far we go back to saying it's the highest number we've had, but it can affect Grand Rapids, Michigan, as we the whole entire Kent County, as we have had a chance to see our fireworks displays and times when everybody comes to Grand Rapids to celebrate downtown, and there has been gunshots fired. Luckily, no fatalities at our large events. But even as we look at situations across the country where terrorists sometimes want to take advantage of large gatherings, when we have our police department and law enforcement coming in from all areas and our county sheriff departments, as many brave police officers and deputies we have, we can only place them so, in so many locations during 100,000 or 50,000 people downtown. So it's great to know that law enforcement has been wanting these shot detectors for a long time. It not only can send the detection to the police department, it can actually send it to police cars in real time and put you within 20 feet of that shot. Law enforcement, I was very surprised that this has been something near the top of their bucket list for years. So I just asked other commissioners to really think of the lives we can help save. Also, the sheriff department believes that if it is put into one city, the other township, your townships, will be able to join that same program for way less money. Because once it's in the county, the cloud program, the other cities will just have to install the camera, so it'll be even lower price. So it can be advantageous to law enforcement throughout the entire county. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Steck, did you have one more comment, or I have one inner city on this?
Yeah,
too?
I just
Sure.
wanted to, thank you. I just wanted to follow up on that. For those that are concerned that this may be just an inner city or Grand Rapids issue, violence is a dynamic that emanates everywhere. And it's important for us to be attentive to that, particularly where it is currently being expressed, but this is an issue for the entire county.
Mhm. Yeah, I was just going to say that this is an issue, we're all in this together as a community, but a life lost is obviously tragic. And then the cost of our prosecutor and our jail and our court system, and it does have a ripple effect. So, okay. Do we have any other questions on these allocations before we take a motion? All right, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve these proposed
Motion.
allocations?
Support.
Moved by
Womack.
support by Ponstein. All right, we should probably take a roll call. Who's doing that, Pam?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right, we are moving on to public comment. Do we have any public comment in the email inbox or hands raised on Zoom? Since we don't have anyone here today. Okay, do we have any miscellaneous today? Commissioner Steck?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to follow up on the possibility that we will still see some lapsed funds through the course of what we see in the next 30, 60 days. What's our thinking on how we would address the potential for lapsed funds?
I think we're going to have to probably really get a good handle on it. I don't know if we'll be able to have that in 2 weeks. We need to go back to Jeff and to a few others to see what our deadlines are. Jeff, I don't know if you're on Zoom, but I thought we had a deadline of beginning of November to submit to the federal government our allocations.
Yeah.
So yeah, good morning. There's this quarterly reporting dates due. We're developing a plan on any leftover funds. We gave dates to all the agreements of people to accept the dollars that they have to report back to us if they're not going to spend it all by a certain date. So we have time to react. So, and we work on a plan on how to reallocate all of those dollars.
So will that come back to the committee then? Once we see
Yeah.
some sense of that, we'll have to at least meet to deal with how we do.
Yeah, I mean, even the municipal lines, I think we are going to have to go back and make sure that they had to have time to approve them with their board meetings, which most of them meet once a month. And then we need to go back and see what's coming in and go from there.
Okay, thank you.
So I think probably the next meeting would be TBD until we have a better sense of that.
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention on the PPE program, the Kent County PPE program. I had mentioned this last meeting, and I know Commissioner Skaggs had mentioned it as well. I guess if we had any left over, I would like us to consider potentially donating that to some of our maybe more higher needs schools, if the kids are still going to have to wear masks and that type of thing for schools, I'd like us to consider that as a potential. So just put that on the radar for next time.
We'll do that.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Moved by Brevi.
Support.
I don't even know if I needed that. Motion moved by Brevi, support by Steck. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.